Bloomberg Audio Studios. Podcasts, radio, news.
At some point over the next 20 or 30 years, machines are going to be more capable than humans at doing most work. And so we have to decide as a society what our purpose is.
Mustafa Suleyman, the AI founder who is now at the forefront of a global race.
Getting the balance right is very important. We have to deliver in the next few years. We're taking a huge bet that we're going to be able to convert this into true intelligence. And if we do, then I think the world is going to look very, very different. We will have abundant intelligence on tap.
From Bloomberg Weekend, this is the Mishal Husain Show. I'm Mishal Husain. Back in 2016, a computer beat a world champion in the ancient game Go. You might remember it because it certainly made the news at the time. It was a huge milestone. Artificial intelligence, which few of us had ever really heard about, was uncovering strategies that hadn't been seen over centuries of human players. One of those who made it happen at the startup DeepMind is now leading AI for Microsoft. But Mustafa Suleyman is an unusual figure in big tech. He's British, for starters. He's interested in technology and public services. He used to work in local government in the UK. He's seen climate talks up close from the inside. Today, though, his work is at the heart of an AI arms race. The big names spending huge sums and making all sorts of promises on what it can do and when. Which is why I'd say he's really worth a listen, not only to understand what's happening right now in this crucial field, but also to understand one of its most influential players. So here's my conversation with Mustafa Suleyman, starting with his own everyday use of AI.
Yesterday night, I stayed up far too late watching a film, and afterwards I added to a table that I've made in Copilot, which basically records all the films that I love, films that I want to watch, lists them by date, describes what they were about. I add my personal notes to it, gives me a link to the film poster, and I can keep just saying, okay, no, add this film that I want to watch. What would be a similar one that I want to watch? So just like you might ask an assistant to organize your life. And I think that people will be surprised. The more obscure, the more creative, the more challenging you think the task is that you're going to ask your AI or Copilot, the better.
But have you used it to do autonomous tasks? So, for example, has it booked tickets for you or bought a gift for you? Because I know this is one of the promises of Copilot. It's just not available in my region, so I haven't been able to try it out for myself yet.
We're still experimenting with it. It can do it. It doesn't always get it right. So it's in like a sort of dev mode. So it's not like generally available just yet. But when it does work, it is the most magical thing you've ever seen.
Okay, what are the mistakes it's made that have that have created problems for you? Bought a present for the wrong person?
Well, it can buy the wrong thing, but obviously you can intervene and it will always ask you permission before it takes the next action and stuff. So it's quite safe. It's one of those things with technology, it promises so much and it's always sort of just around the corner. I remember like the allure of getting a Discman back in the 90s. And I had this dream that I was going to be rollerblading down the street. And then I got one. And obviously it didn't have any kind of vibration-proof, shock-proof technology yet. And so it would skip every time like I turned it on its side or tried to put it in my back pocket. And so it's a funny thing, technology. It's still magical and amazing, but it's always just got a little bit further to go. And I think in this case, it's a while yet before it's every day.
And I guess that given everything you've seen, you're one of the founders of DeepMind and you've worked at Google and had your own AI company Inflection before you came to Microsoft. Does that mean that when you see these hiccups or these stages of development, you have faith, you don't get frustrated? Because you remember the moment when back in 2016, when your AI model beat the world champion at Go, which was a huge moment for AI.
I think I'm very stoic about these things. Like, I know that it's going to work in the next 6 months or 12 months, or maybe the worst case, 18 months. But, I think we've got a pretty good rhythm now of picking things which are not too far away, but are genuinely transformative. And also, it's important to remember how magical it is today. It can generate images, it can generate videos. It is already, sort of superhuman magical. And I think I'm just one of those people that's still inspired by what it can do at any given moment.
By this time next year, could I be buying my Christmas presents using an autonomous AI agent?
I'm pretty certain that you will be. Yeah, I think it's highly, highly likely.
So speaking of magical things, the recent announcement that you made at Microsoft about superintelligence, that's a term which has really crept into the public debate thanks to you and others in the last few months. When you use the term superintelligence, what does it mean to you?
Superintelligence in the industry today means an AI system that can learn any new task and perform better than all humans combined at all tasks. So it is a very high bar. And at the moment, it comes with a great deal of risk. It is not clear. In fact, it's very uncertain how we would limit its capabilities and align, so get a system like that to care a lot about humans and want us to succeed and flourish. It's very unclear how we would contain and align a system that is so much more powerful than us. And so the framing that I prefer is one of a humanist superintelligence, one that is always in our corner, on our team, aligned to human interests. And until we can prove that it will remain safe, we won't continue to develop a system that has the potential to run away from us and to get out of the box. And I think that that's an obvious thing to say. Everybody should agree to that. And yet I think it's kind of a novel position in the industry at the moment.
So is that how you're trying to set Microsoft apart? A lot of people are working on superintelligence. Are you trying to make Microsoft distinctive by saying we will always use it through a humanist lens?
Yes, that is our position. Microsoft is a company that's been around for 50 years. It is very careful. It's highly trusted. 90% of the S&P 500 use us to provide email and operating systems and everyday productivity tools, which are now among the best in the world with Copilot. And, I think that we've got that reputation because the company's been careful, and we're going to continue to be careful. And setting out a vision of humanist superintelligence is part of that program.
So what does that mean for your rivals in that field, some of whom you work closely with, like OpenAI, which I'm sure we'll talk more about? But does it mean that they're the Wild West and you're the moral ones?
I think that everybody has to decide what they stand for and how they operate. And I don't want to judge how they're operating. Right now, I don't see any evidence of large-scale mass harm. I don't see any indication that these things are improving themselves or operating autonomously. But we all predict a time in the next 5 years, maybe in the next 10 years, where these capabilities do start to emerge, and systems like this could set their own goals, or they could improve their own code, or they could act autonomously. Those things are capabilities that I've clearly outlined as increasing the level of risk, and therefore we have to approach them with caution, with more transparency and audit, with more government engagement, and make proactive declarations about how close we are to those three capabilities.
And does that mean that you won't be releasing a superintelligence tool until you're confident that it can be controlled?
Yeah, I think that's right. I mean, I think for sure the containment and alignment are necessary prerequisites. They're red lines. And I think everybody in the industry has to sign up to that idea. I mean, nobody wants to cause mass harm. I mean, fundamentally, even though we all disagree, clearly everybody is committed to the survival of our species, and I would hope the kind of flourishing and well-being of everybody. So that's the discussion that we're trying to push now, and require everybody to ask themselves in the industry, are they building a humanist superintelligence? Does it really stand for people and for our species first?
Yeah. I'm just wondering how much confidence we can really have in that, given that things do go wrong. And I don't just mean AI, I mean humans do wrong things, or things just go wrong for other reasons. And the recent example that Microsoft had to deal with was having to cease and disable some services that were being used by the Israeli Ministry of Defense after reporting by The Guardian that suggested they could be being used for mass surveillance.
That was very good reporting by The Guardian. We were very grateful for it. And as soon as we became aware of it, we actually made all of the necessary changes, removed the IDF from those servers. And I think, they were clearly not in compliance with our terms of service. and there's an ongoing investigation internally.
But I guess the broader point is that it's hard to have confidence of controls and checks and balances and uses.
It is hard. I mean, these are huge and complicated systems. They carry a lot of risk. And the most that we can do is make sure that we are auditing them and we're removing actors that violate our terms of service as quickly as possible.
So are the first uses of superintelligence going to be in the medical field?
I think so. I think that this is probably the most exciting application of superintelligence. I think we now have systems that can diagnose any rare condition that is found in the literature significantly better than human performance, and do so with fewer tests and interventions. And that's the key thing. It's like often it's actually quite expensive to run medical intervention tests before you get to a diagnosis. And often they can be unnecessary too, and they take time. And then in that process, the condition can often worsen. In our case, our system does this significantly more cheaply with fewer tests and with higher accuracy. We're just putting it through independent peer review at the moment, and soon there'll be clinical trials of it too. So I think this is very, very, very exciting.
And did you push for that focus yourself? Because you've been running Microsoft AI for a while, about 18 months now. Superintelligence was a big recent announcement. And I'm conscious as I hear you talk about it that your mother was a nurse, and you, unusually for senior people in tech, you've worked in the public sector as well.
Yeah, I mean, this is an area that's very important to me. Obviously, my mum was an NHS nurse, and I'm just a big believer that technology is here to serve us. It should make our lives better, should make us more comfortable. One day, I think it is going to help us to live longer, give us the option to work less if we choose to. I do think it's going to produce abundance. And I think that we have to make conscious decisions to use it for those applications first. And that's why, even back at DeepMind, I ran our health unit. And, I'm very passionate about this. Abundance
is such a big promise. Tell me what you mean by it, because most of the time we hear about AI destroying jobs. But are you saying that the work will be done by AI increasingly, and therefore we humans won't have to work as much?
I mean, I think that it is inevitable that at some point over the next 20 or 30 years, machines are going to be more capable than humans at doing most work. And that might come much sooner. And so we have to decide as a society what our purpose is. And we have to be very thoughtful about the rate of introduction of new machines, because we have to make sure that that rate of displacement is counterbalanced with a mechanism to fund people and to support people through a massive transition, for which there is probably not going to be other jobs on the other side that are more competitive than, what a machine can do. And so this is a real big step change in what it is to organize society.
But do you believe in the idea of a universal basic income, that that's what AI, being very productive, making the economy more productive, could unlock?
Yeah, I mean, I think I've long been on record saying that I think that is both inevitable and very desirable. We already live in a world of abundance. It's just poorly distributed. We already have more calories to consume. We have an incredible amount of food wastage. It's just unevenly distributed. And now that value isn't just manifested in atoms like food and cars and physical things. It's manifested in digital goods, ideas, knowledge, intelligence. And that's actually great news, because that can proliferate. It can spread extremely quickly around the entire world. I mean, these LLMs and chatbots have been the fastest spreading technology in history, basically 2 billion annual users in the space of 3 years. And that's actually amazing, because it's delivering knowledge to every single person who wants to use it on their phone in the current sort of format and device they already use. So I think that we have no problem with getting technology out and available to everybody, because there's going to be massive competitive forces to reduce the cost of experiencing an AI. The challenge we're going to have to figure out is how we tax and redistribute so that the transition is a healthy one.
Tell me more about where these ideas and your beliefs come from. Your mother was a nurse, but the family you grew up in London in the 1980s and 1990s, how would you describe it?
Pretty working class. Yeah, my dad was a minicab driver. My mum works in NHS. And we were, fairly regular, like kind of unremarkable. My parents didn't super value education stuff. They always thought I should go get a trade. And my mum would often say to me, you should be a carpenter or electrician, leave school at 16 and stuff. So I don't know. It comes from a place of just experiencing the kind of rougher end of things a little bit, and then having just a desire to try to do the best that we can do with the short life that we have.
Your dad had come to the UK from Syria. Did your parents meet in England?
Yes, yeah, that's right.
And what happened when you were 16, Mustafa? Because I read that when your parents split up, you and your brother, your younger brother, were pretty much left to fend for themselves.
That's true, yeah. I don't know where you read that, but yeah, it was me and my younger brother did live on our own for a few years, yeah.
I think you mentioned this in a Guardian interview a couple of years ago when your book was coming out, but I'm really curious to know more about what it taught you and how you dealt with it at the time.
I think that when you're that age, you're just sort of precocious and overconfident and fearless. We had everything that we needed, and it worked out pretty well.
And this is in a crucial time, the last couple of years of school. And you did do well in those last couple of years of school because you ended up getting to Oxford.
Yeah, I was very lucky because I had great teachers and good mentors, and I went to a very good school, which was far from my home, but you could do exams to get in. So I studied really hard when I was 10 years old for the entrance exams, and it was essentially like going to a private school. Basically, everyone was like very studious and got great grades and stuff. And yeah, I was lucky enough to get into Oxford, and yeah, that was an amazing experience.
Have you thought about what your life would have been like in that period in your mid-teens had it not been for that school?
Yeah, I haven't thought much about that. It would have been pretty different.
And then you got to Oxford and you did actually subject pretty close to what my son is doing there right now. He's doing theology, you did philosophy and theology. And then, tragically to my ears, as a parent, you dropped out.
Yeah, well, I was very frustrated and like eager to change the world and get stuff done. And so I actually dropped out, and I helped to start a telephone counselling service for young British Muslims called Muslim Youth Helpline, which I worked on for 2 or 3 years as a volunteer. And it was a secular peer-to-peer listing service for young British Muslims that post 9/11 were dealing with a lot of, I guess, identity crisis would be the way that we would describe it in hindsight. But at the time, it was just like, lack of like connection to community, family, parents, a lot of bullying. And so, yeah, I worked on that pretty much full time for 2 or 3 years.
And had you experienced anti-Muslim sentiment and hatred yourself at that time, given the period we're talking about after 9/11?
A little bit, yeah. I think it was more just not so much me, but I think a lot of people felt that, we weren't sort of British enough, and people were figuring out how to both live their cultural, religious identities in the context of families that often were first generation, didn't really speak the language, didn't know how to navigate the system. And then this increased kind of skepticism that we were sort of mostly terrorists or whatever. And I think there was just this general kind of fear and exclusion. And actually, most of the time that was dealt with by just having kind and supportive conversation and having somebody be available on the other end of a telephone.
Yeah, someone to talk to. I know the work of the helpline, actually, so I know exactly the world that you're talking about. Did you think hard about dropping out of university? And have you regretted it at any point since?
I haven't regretted it, and I probably could have thought harder about it. My tutor did encourage me to like switch subjects or change college, and actually had me go meet one of his friends in a different college to go and talk about doing history or PPE. But at that point, I was just so full of energy and like eager to start things. I started a business at the same time, sort of PDAs into restaurants to try and do restaurant booking and stuff, and doing their networking and so on. It was like very early days of the internet, so it was a bit early, but I did that for about a year or two as well. I had too much energy, I think, for sitting around thinking in the dreamy spires.
Now here you are in this circle of power, right? One of a small group of people who are making decisions on a technology that is already changing all our lives and will continue to do so. How conscious are you of that power?
Very conscious. I take it very seriously. And it's a great responsibility. And, I think that this is a moment when decisions that we make may have very lasting consequences. And I read history and I look back at times, for example, in the social media revolution, where I think it was very clear that there were potential harms that maybe fell on deaf ears for too long. Or I look back at, the electric car revolution that could have taken off way back in the 20s, or, you look at kind of smoking or oil. So I'm very sensitive to those things because it's very clear that these things will cause harm. And I think that we have to be very, very careful about how we deploy them and how they're introduced into the world.
Do you talk about this with your peers, with people like Sam Altman, who I know you're close to?
Yes. I think everybody in the industry does. And there's definitely a group of the CEOs. Obviously, Sam and Dario from Anthropic were co-founders. Me and Demis were co-founders. So we all know each other very, very well. And I think on the whole, everybody is genuinely committed to trying to find the right path through. It's also very competitive. So there's obviously a lot of that dynamic too.
Yeah. Do you recognize the term broligarchy?
I haven't heard that before, but I can figure out what it means. Yeah, I guess that's true. And it is very male-centric, although it should be said, Mira Murati, who's the ex-CTO of OpenAI, is one of the best people in the field.
Or Tech Bros, I'm sure you've heard that one. I don't know if you've seen Jesse Armstrong's Mountainhead. Have you?
No, I haven't. No.
It is all about a group of people, one of whom is clearly Elon Musk, another one who looks like Peter Thiel or sounds like Peter Thiel. And it's, it's quite a sobering portrait, his impression of life in this quite rarefied, very powerful circle.
Yeah, and I think part of the challenge is that we all spend a lot of time in Silicon Valley where the skies are blue and, life is very peaceful. I try to travel a lot. I just came back from China a couple of weeks ago where I was in 5 or 6 different cities. And it's just staggering to get out of the bubble and see how this technology is being developed on the other side of the world. And, both the pace of innovation, but also, I think the thoughtfulness of some of the regulatory stuff. I think they are definitely thinking pretty carefully about it as well. So it's impressive. I also come back to London a lot and make sure that I spend time outside of Silicon Valley.
So if you have a different impression to someone like Jesse Armstrong or others about your world, can I ask you just to, because you know these key players, can you describe some of them in one word? Like if I say to you, Sam Altman, what word first comes into your mind?
Oh my God. Yeah, I guess courageous.
Because?
Well, he's obviously sort of growing his data center fleet very, very aggressively. He may well turn out to be one of the great entrepreneurs of our generation. He's certainly achieved a lot. And I think now he's building data centers at a faster rate than I think anyone in the industry. And if he can pull it off, it will be pretty dramatic.
It's interesting that there is an if on that. And I understand why. There are huge amounts of money being spent by OpenAI. Is it a gamble? Is it not a given that it's going to pay off for them?
Well, I think that ChatGPT is one of the greatest products that we've seen in a generation. And so that speaks for itself. At the same time, I guess they've signed over $1.5 trillion of commitments for building data centers over the next 5 or 10 years. Their revenues are quite a long way from there. So they've got a long way to go, but they're a very talented team. So I've got every confidence they can do it.
Okay. So other descriptions, what word would you use to describe Demis Hassabis?
Yeah, probably a great scientist. I think he's a great thinker and he's a good polymath. He's made massive contributions in the field multiple times. And so I think he's truly exceptional.
You work together and now you're competitors.
Yeah, but we started off as very, very close friends. We worked together every day for 10 years and I learned a lot from him and I have huge respect for him.
Do you still talk?
Yeah, we texted last night, actually. I congratulated him on the Nano Banana Gemini 3 and 5 years of AlphaFold all in 1 week. Yeah.
Have you tried out Gemini 3? Because it is creating quite a lot of waves. Do you think it is better than ChatGPT?
They're kind of different. It's definitely got more kind of niche skills that ChatGPT doesn't have, and it's very fast. ChatGPT is very strong, so I wouldn't go that far.
Okay, is it better than Copilot?
It can do things that Copilot can't do. Copilot has features that it doesn't have. Like Copilot is actually amazing for vision, One of my favorite features is like pull out your phone and talk about the world with Copilot in your hand, and it can see exactly what you're looking at, and you can talk about it and get feedback and opinions. You might be shopping for furniture or clothes. Yes, we're pushing the capabilities, but we're really trying to imagine what is the day-to-day experience of having this really intelligent assistant at your side that can talk to you about the world and help you sort of help unblock you whenever you get stuck with something.
Okay. I'm only going to do one more of these, but it's Elon Musk. How would you describe him?
I guess as a bulldozer, he's kind of got superhuman capabilities to bend reality to his will and has, pretty incredible track record. And somehow he sort of mostly manages to pull off what appears to be impossible. But yeah, probably different kind of set of values.
I have interviewed him.
Yes.
He ended up calling me an NPC. So I guess that was probably a form of bulldozing.
Yeah, I mean, that's probably a good example. That sounds like exactly like Elon. I kind of like that he speaks his mind. I mean, he's very unfiltered.
I think you've said that your politics are different from him and Peter Thiel's, that the libertarian, not much value to the nation state, etc. It's not your world. Would you call yourself as being on the left of the political spectrum, or is there a different description you'd use?
I would say I'm sort of a centrist these days. I definitely started as a lefty, but yeah, I'm proud to say that I'm on the kind of center left of the spectrum. I believe that government plays an important role in society. It's a controversial thing to say in Silicon Valley, but I think regulation is necessary, and it has made most technologies better. And people forget this, like cars only work because we have driver training and emissions regulations and street lights and motorway speed limits and so on and so forth. And so that's what regulation is when it works well, and we just need more of that.
Do you feel isolated saying that? Because clearly the Trump administration is not into regulation, and the industry overall is quite happy with that.
Yeah, I think that right now we are not in a mode where there is huge catastrophic harm. The industry's done a pretty good job of introducing very powerful chatbots in a way where the personality is sculpted to be very even-handed, to be very evidence-based. I think that it didn't have to go like that. It went like that, I think, because the leaders have done a pretty decent job. Now, that doesn't mean that there aren't going to be issues coming up, and I'm obviously very wide-eyed about them, but I don't think we're in a mode where we need emergency regulation. For example, some of the regulations that have been proposed in Europe are currently in talks to be wound back with the EU AI Act, and people shouldn't criticize that. That's like the process working. That's the regulator taking feedback, seeing how things work in practice. That should be celebrated. But at the same time, they have to be able to have the freedom to experiment and try new regulations. And I think that's a good thing.
Do you think, Mustafa, you see some of these issues differently now that you are right at the heart of one of the biggest companies of all? Because in your book, The Coming Wave, and in a piece you wrote about the same time for Foreign Affairs, you were quite clear on how much governance was needed. In fact, you said you wanted 3 different kinds of governance regimes modeled on climate change and financial stability and arms control, that AI and tech could learn from all 3 of those. And yet you sound much more sanguine now. And is it just because of where you are?
I'm still calling for those things. We should have a financial stability board for AI. We should have a climate process, an ICANN, which basically goes and audits the progress that we're making. I advocated for the White House AI principles under the Biden administration, where we made voluntary commitments as companies. At the time, it was my startup Inflection, but we pushed all the other companies to do it as well, where you disclose the size of your model. We've signed up to those disclosures in Europe and with the UK AI Safety Institute. So I don't mean to say that we don't need it. I'm saying that these are such long-term effects, and these governance processes take so long to build that we basically got to start now. But what we don't need is knee-jerk reaction. We don't need some panicked overreaction, because that would cause a different set of problems.
The superintelligence work you're doing, and indeed everything that you're doing in AI in the moment, you're in a new phase, aren't you? Because now that you've got a revised agreement with OpenAI, you suddenly have the freedom to pursue AI independently. Help me understand how that relationship with OpenAI is going to work in future, because you've been collaborators, Microsoft and OpenAI, for a long time. Now you're also going to be competitors. How does that work?
It's a sort of complicated setup for people to follow along to. But the bottom line is that up until a few weeks ago, Microsoft was not allowed by contract to pursue artificial general intelligence or superintelligence independently. And the deal with OpenAI was that it would then go and build AGI when they signed the agreements back in 2019. And in return, Microsoft would build the AI infrastructure, the chips and the data centers. And in return for providing the chips, Microsoft would get a license to the models that have been built. And we still have that license to everything that OpenAI builds up until 2032. But OpenAI decided that they wanted to take on more compute and buy compute from other providers. And so they now have deals with SoftBank and many others, Oracle, to build more data centers than Microsoft wanted to build for them. And so in return, we then have the right to go and develop our own AI. And obviously that was a big part of me joining the company 18 months ago, that we're now hiring out a superintelligence team and pursuing our own AI development.
So was that deal a relief to you? Because without it, how much could you have done as Microsoft's AI chief?
Well, I mean, a lot. I mean, we have $280 billion of revenue, all major institutions in the world, and they need to be able to use our AI features and our AI tools every single day. So, we're still been a general purpose AI development shop over the last 18 months. But now we can work on some techniques and methodologies that have the potential to exceed human performance at all tasks. And so it is a shift for us.
Does your relationship with OpenAI include not poaching each other's staff? Because we've just had another bit of evidence of the talent war that's underway. You've just lost one of your key people to Apple.
Yeah, he's going to go and run the Apple lab. I mean, look, I think that there's huge rotation. I mean, the talent in the industry, we just got a whole bunch of people from Google DeepMind. We got people from OpenAI. I mean, there's a lot of rotation. This is part of the industry. So there's certainly no poach agreements. That would not be legal. People can go work for whoever they want to go work for. And I think that at this time in the industry, it's just very, very competitive.
And does that mean that you are prepared to, and are you already matching the kinds of sums that Meta's been spending, the $100 to $200 million packages?
I don't think anyone's matching those things. Zuck's taken a particular approach that involves sort of hiring a lot of individuals rather than maybe creating a team. And I don't really think that's the right approach. I think what we did well at DeepMind is that we were very selective. What I've been doing at Microsoft over the last year and a half is adding people incrementally who fit the culture and who suit the skill set and work well with the rest of the group, weeding out those who don't and being very, very attentive to the details. So we're very much creating a team rather than a set of individuals.
So you're not prepared to match salary offers on that scale, because that was what was recently reported.
Yeah, I mean, that was the rumor. I think that was, obviously very, very unprecedented and may have been the case for a few individuals, but that's certainly not the norm.
Would you rather Mark Zuckerberg, or Zuck as you call him, would you rather he rethought that? Does it make life much more difficult for you?
No, not at all. I mean, I think that he's all in, right? He's building a 2 gigawatt data center, which will probably cost him a couple $100 billion over the next 2 or 3 years. And I think he said publicly to Trump that he's going to spend upwards of $600 billion in the next 3 years on data centers. And, luckily for Microsoft, we have 33 gigawatts of compute capacity in our fleet. Our primary business is to build data centers and provide them to third parties. And so we can either use that for our own training or we can use it for inference where we sell it to third parties. So we've got a very, very good setup in that sense. We're kind of hedged against that risk.
Can you see why people worry about not just the amounts of money being spent by the industry, but the circular range of a lot of those deals? You're an investor in OpenAI. They're also buying services from you. Everyone seems to be in a relationship with NVIDIA. There's a huge proportion of the US economy that is dependent on things continuing to go well for firms like yours.
Yeah, I mean, I think that's fair. Obviously, customers and providers have often invested in one another. and, provides good stimulus to get us going. But it's something to watch. I'm definitely watching it carefully, and I think others are too. So, I think that getting the balance right is very important. We have to deliver in the next few years. I mean, every team now is building incredibly large, very powerful computers, and we're taking a huge bet that we're going to be able to convert this into true intelligence. And if we do, then I think the world is going to look very, very different. I mean, we will have abundant intelligence on tap. And I think people still underrate how phenomenal that is.
You say the world, except that this is really about two countries, the US and China. That's where almost all the labs are.
That's true. And everything has concentrated even more around Silicon Valley in the last 18 months. And that's sort of natural. I mean, I think we see that in a lot of other historical technology trends. At the same time, open source is doing very well, and the cost of production is also going through the floor. So it costs 90% less to ask a question of one of the best AI models in the world than it did 2 years ago. You don't get curves that fall that quickly in any other discipline. And obviously, when the cost goes down, everybody gets access. So I don't think there's going to be an access issue.
Is there anything you look back on now that you would have done differently? Because you're still only in your early 40s, so you've got a lot of remarkable achievements. But is there anything left undone or that you reflect on?
Yeah, I really want to nail medical superintelligence. And, I started DeepMind Health back in 2015. And, we published a lot of great papers and we had a lot of clinical trials, but we didn't quite get there. And this time round, I think that's going to be the most magical application. I want to do more in energy efficiency and battery storage, developing new compounds for renewables and so on. I think that AI will really transform the energy industry. So those are my two sort of big focuses, I think.
And is that what your day's like, that when the engineers, your team, are saying to you, we can do this and this, you're saying, this is how I want to use it?
What we're always focused on is, can we build general purpose models that are as smart as humans at all capabilities? I mean, that is the number one goal. And then the question is, how do we apply them? Where do we use them? What can they do for people? I'm actually very proud of a lot of the use cases in Copilot. I mean, many people are using it for companionship, emotional support, therapy, making difficult life decisions. It's giving me high quality access to information, it's giving me emotional support, and is helping keep me organized. And so...
What do you mean helping you get emotional support?
So basically, I have a practice that at the end of the day, when I'm in the car driving home, I have like a 5 or 10 minute conversation with Copilot about something that was tricky in my day or something that I felt frustrated about. Maybe emotional support's a little strong, but it's just like having a chat with a friend and kind of downloading really on what went well and what didn't. And once you build that memory up over time, it gets really helpful because it personalizes. So Copilot now remembers most of what you say, and it will personalize its answers to you and refer to something that you said last week, for example, or a trend or a pattern. And that is just like super helpful. I feel kind of refreshed after a conversation with I feel like I've let go of something. It's like a burden that I've released.
So it is a friend, a therapist, a family member almost?
Yeah, it's a little bit of everything. That's always the challenge when we're trying to, sort of understand a new technology and come up with words to describe something which is a little bit like many other things, but is also fundamentally different. This is what an AI is now.
I just wonder if there's any aspect of that makes you pause. People go home and maybe they don't have to bother talking to others in their life in the same way because they've said it all and they've got what they need back.
Yeah, or the flip side is they don't have to take it out on their partner or their best friends. I still call my best friends every weekend and have a good old chat. So I think if anything, it's actually deepened some of my relationships with my friends. I come to those conversations just feeling a little lighter and more ready to talk about other things.
And your family, where are your parents now and how do they feel about the choices you made?
Yeah, no, I think my mum's very, she's a proud mum. She's very excited and she uses Copilot. She used Pi before this. In fact, I went to see her 3 or 4 weeks ago, and she was still using Pi. And I was like, that's amazing.
Which is what you founded at Inflection, right?
Yeah, I was quite impressed to see that. She still has voice calls with it. And just throughout the whole day, we'll be walking around the garden and she'll pull out her phone and, she'll scan a plant and talk about, whether this is a chestnut tree and which variety it is and could I grow it at home and when we're in the park and stuff. And so it's amazing to see her just naturally use it in her everyday life. And I think that is quite gratifying.
Do you see your future in the US, Mustafa? Because I'm sure the UK would love to have you back.
I would have loved to have started Inflection in the UK. I'm very British in mentality. But one of the things that I don't like is the tall poppy syndrome. I think that there's not enough of a culture of risk-taking. There's a little bit of a taboo around commercialization and making money and starting companies and being entrepreneurial. And there's not enough of a kind of celebration of experimentation and failure. Whereas in the Valley, everyone's nuts and everyone loves failure. So they're just constantly talking about how things are going wrong and how this was a disaster. And it's very liberating. I mean, it's also very cheesy and it can grate when you're kind of a bit of a cynical English person. But when you get into the rhythm of it, it's great. Everyone's great. Everyone's up for it.
But I'm wondering whether there is actually something, it's not just chat. It is actually if you're talking about failure in that way, you are braver about it or just, it's normal. It's something you have to go through. It's a different mindset.
Yeah, exactly. And there's also a kind of hustle culture. It's quite humbling to see everybody just on the make, trying to understand some new technology, random non-technical people reading science papers, in a Starbucks or whatever, there'll be someone on their laptop watching a machine learning video. You'll be reading a book in a coffee shop and you'll overhear two people who don't know each other just try to spark a conversation that might turn into something. It's just there's just an energy. And I think I would love for that to be the case in London too. And I think it could be, but we've got to have political leaders who celebrate risk-taking and business.
Finally, I need you to prepare me for what AI will do to my life. Or right now, do you think AI could have had this conversation with you? Or could it have done a better job than me? You can break it to me if you think AI could have done a better job than me interviewing you.
Probably not today, but maybe if you had prepared with an AI, then, it could have given you questions to ask and stuff. Although you did do a lot of detailed research, so your team's obviously very good. I do think that there are going to be AI reporters. So I run MSN, the news service at Microsoft. One of the things I'm very excited about is how AI news reporters can reinvigorate local news. So imagine that there are hundreds of thousands of AI reporters that can make phone calls into people who are at the scene, who can verify eyewitness footage, conduct interviews, stitch those together into little montages, and not just do it for big national stories where the investment is justified, but do it at a very, very local level to provide accurate and factually reliable information. I think that people need to have the courage to be optimistic about how these things can actually improve our system.
Are you developing AI reporters for MSN?
We're exploring everything. I'm also on the board of The Economist and have been talking to them a lot about it. And, I think that we're exploring all kinds of things at the moment.
So AI reporters will happen. AI interviewers? I suspect yes, from what you're saying.
You've got a little bit longer, maybe 6 months. I'm kidding.
Well, are you? I'm not sure you are.
No, I am kidding. It's going to be plenty. It's going to be a very, very long time. It's really a long time to get it perfect. This was exceptional.
Mustafa Suleyman, thank you very much for talking to us.
Thank you very much, Mishal. This was a lot of fun.
And that's the Mishal Husain Show for this week. If you follow us, you'll know as soon as there's a new episode. And if you'd like to email us, please use mishalshow@bloomberg.net. By the way, if you've left us a rating or a comment, thank you. These conversations are also on YouTube and on Bloomberg TV. And there's a text version with my own thoughts in note form. You'll find those at bloomberg.com/weekend. Our producers are Jessica Beck and Chris Martlew. The executive producer is Louisa Lewis. Guest booking by Dave Warren. Sound engineer Richard Ward. Video editing Evander Thompson and Megan Olson. Social media is by Alex Morgan and the music is by Bart Warshaw. At Bloomberg Weekend, Brendan Francis Newnham is editorial director of audio and special projects, and our executive editor is Catherine Bell. We'd also like to thank Summer Sadi and the Bloomberg podcast team. And thank you for listening. Until next time, goodbye.